Okay, good morning. Hemshech Beis, volume 2. We're on page 1195. We're at the end of the Maimer 143. We did a review on Friday. Excuse me. We did a review on Friday of the end of this Maimer, so I'm not going to do another review. Just briefly, where we concluded is explanation of the Eish Hey, yearning, longing for a connection with the Eish Yud, Isha Ish, Eish Hey to Ish Yud, Sama Nafsha, in a form of Chesef, the Kiloyan, to reach the De'er Ha-Gvul, which is the Eish Shchera, the dark flame, darkened by the Tzimtzum, and its purpose is to illuminate the darkness, is reaching to the divine that's beyond the Tzimtzum, meaning was not impacted by the Tzimtzum directly, and it wants to connect to the Eir HaSev of the transcendent energy and the energy even beyond that, beyond Sevav Mamala. And this is all indicated in the verse, Samchuni Bashishes. Ravduni betapuchim ki cheles ava ani. The cheles ava is malchus, lovesick, sick in the sense that it's lacking, and it feels the deep lack of that connection. And he explained how both ashishes, the wine, and the smell and scent of the tapuchim, of the apples, is the yearning to relieve that love sickness. Now, I just want to add one thing. I'm looking up in the sources in the Maimorim that speak about Samchuni Bashishes, I noticed something which the Rebbe Rashab does not quote, but it seems pretty obvious that it's connected here. It's actually a Maimer that begins Tovkuf Samach Gimel of the Rebbe. Alter Rebbe said the first Maimer on this posuk, but then there's Maimorim from the Tzemach Tzedek, Rebbe Marash, Rebbe Rashab, and other places, Tavrei Samach, that talk about this topic. And there they cite, number one, that Ashishes is also Ish and Isha. That's the plural of Ashishes, even though it's referring to wine, but it also has the words Ish and Isha on it, meaning the two Ishes, the two Isha, the unity between the Ish and Isha, and also two levels of Eish. Ashishes from two levels of Eish, Eish Shchera and Eish Levana, the dark fire and the white fire. So though the Rebbe Rashab doesn't explicitly state it, but in the Maimorim it talks about it very explicitly from a Tikkun Zeyar with sources, that is the joining together. So Samchuni, which means sustain, the sustaining of the connection of these two forces. So it fits into the topic and theme. Just wanted to throw that into the equation here. Okay. And the final words of this Maimer were that the reach of tshuva, which is, and tefillah and tshuva, which is higher than the reach, the aroma of mitzvahs, reaches into Atzmus Ein Sof, and from there comes the refuah, the healing of what? Of chelas ava. We're talking about an illness of a lack, that there's that love and yearning and longing that's in the form of chela, and that's resolved b'hareis lo neyam zivecha, which causes the tischazik v'tisrapa to strengthen and to heal the Knesset Yisrael, Malchus, the neshama, in its deep longing, in its profound longing. Okay, so that all is part of a bigger discussion of why did the Rebbe Rashab go into this whole Eish Hey and Eish Yud? Because he's coming to explain Eliyahu HaNavi, who was Vayirape Es Mizbeach Hashem HaHorus, he healed the defiled, the desecrated and destroyed Mizbeach, which is Malchus, which we'll learn about in the next Maimer. And to explain Mizbeach is Malchus. The Eish, the fire in the Mizbeach, is the yearning of Malchus, like he said, and that's how the whole thing began. Now, why did he come to explain Eliyahu? Because Eliyahu, the end of the day, he caused them to say, Havayu Elikim, Havayu Elikim, twice Havayu Elikim, which is referring to Havayu Elikim, both the Havayu Elikim in Havayu Dilatata, in Mamal Kalalmin, in the Eiragvul, in the finite energy, Oretz Metachas, in the Pasuk V'yidaita Yeh, and Havayu Elikim in Havayu Dileila of Shamayim Mimal, in the Eirabligvul, that we're addressing now, and drawing down the Eirabligvul into the Eiragvul, as the point of Mal Chelis Ava, in order to draw down, because he wants to reach Sevu Klamen and higher than that. So all this is part of explaining which is the operative verse that we've been learning about, of bringing the Das Elyon and Das Tachten, Ayin of the Yesh Amiti and Ayin of the Yesh Nivra, and that all came to explain the transformation of the Tzimtzum that we're able to, through our work, below V'yadaita Yem, V'shaves Levavecha, to transform the Tzimtzum, that it should become, the Elikim should be a Keli to Havaya. The Tzimtzum should recognize that its purpose is in order to reveal, and Havaya is in order to be revealed through Elikim, and that's our work of transforming the Tzimtzum, to be able to experience pre-Tzimtzum reality in a post-Tzimtzum consciousness, as we've been discussing a number of times throughout these hundreds of pages that we've been learning this theme. Right. So now, experiencing Shamayim Mimal is a pre-Tzimtzum consciousness. Why? Because it is, we said, untouched by the Tzimtzum. It's touched by the Tzimtzum that it doesn't affect us consciously. But the Eir itself is a pure, undiluted form of divine revelation, revealing the source. Its purpose is not to illuminate this world, but it's to reveal the source. And now we, through our Aveda, our thirst, our Rotze, our Tzemoyin, and our longing draws that down into a post-Tzimtzum reality, that we should be able to experience that type of pure divinity. In addition, of course, to experiencing the divine within existence. So that sums up essentially the central theme here, the theme that we've been learning in context of the central theme of Ayin Beis is interface. So what I'm going to do now is finish the Maimer Lech Lecho, but in case anybody has a question, please, by all means. And then we're going to do the end of the Maimer, answering the questions that began at the beginning of the Maimer. That's what we'll learn now. And let's see how far we got. Maybe we'll start the next Maimer if time allows. Anybody want to ask anything? Comment? Nothing. Okay. Good. So go to the end of the Maimer. Well, first of all, does everybody hear me and see me clearly? Maybe I'm...
No, we hear you just fine. You're doing great.
Oh, okay, good. Everyone's so quiet. I was wondering, maybe I'm just talking to myself. Okay, fine. So now, as we usually do, in order to understand the end of the Maimer, let's go back to the beginning, just to sum up what were the questions in this Lech Lecho Maimer. And again, a classic style. The Rebbe Rashab wrote first the Hemshech. Knows what we just learned is what he wrote. Then he added the beginnings and ends in a timely fashion, corresponding to the parsha of that week. In this case, Lech Lecho Ayin Vov. So the beginning of the Maimer.
The addition was before he said the Maimer?
Most likely, yes, before. Yeah, most likely before. We don't know how much before, but most likely before. But, it's also conceivable that he wrote it after. I would say probably before, because he was quite ahead. Okay, so here's the beginning of the Maimer. And the advantage, as I say, of this is this was written at a second stage. So in a way, it's like learning the themes that we learned through the lens of the beginning and end, written later. So sometimes it adds a little context and perspective on the themes. So Vayemer Hashem El Avram Lech Lecho Ma'atzchem Ladchem Beis Avicha. Here are the questions that Rebbe Rashab added. I'm looking at page 1189, Aleph Kuf Peites, just in order to get back to the end. So Sarich Lahavin. First question was the kefil. What's Lech Lecho? It could have just said Lech, go. Lech Lecho. You shall go. That's question one. Gam, what's Darichas Ma'atzcha Meladatcha? He said Ma'atzcha, from your land. Why do you have to also add? Why does he also have to add from your birthplace and Beis Avicha, from the home of your parents, of your father? Then he brings some Yalkut Shmeini, that the 5 double letters in the Hebrew alphabet, Man Sapach, the 5 letters that have a double, Mem, there's a Mem and a Mem Sofit, there's a Nun and a Nun Sofit, and a Tzadik and Pei and Chaf, all of them have a regular and a long version, or the end version. Like the end of a pasuk ends with the Shlos Mem. The end of a so the Medrash says that these double letters, Kulon Loshen Geula, all of them indicate on the Loshen expression of Geula. And the Medrash goes on to say how you find 2 letters connected to Geula throughout Torah. The Chaf, it says Chaf, Shaboy Nigel Avram Me'ur Kazdim. Lech Lecha has a double Chaf. So he says that double Chaf indicates on the chapter about Avram Avinu, who was redeemed from Ur Kazdim. Remember, Ur Kazdim was where why is it called Ur Kazdim? Because that's where he was thrown into Kivshana Eish, to the oven, because he was a threat to Nimrod and to the pagan culture, and he was saved from that. So that's the first kfula, Chaf. It says twice Chaf, and that refers to the Gula of Avram. I said at the time I would look up the other 4. Maybe some of you did. They're easy to find. I remember Tzaddik. I think Tzemach Tzaddik is Geula, Hamit is Vashlema, 2 Tzaddiks. I don't remember right now the other 3. But it's not relevant really to our discussion here. Here he's focusing, of course, on Lech Lecha. So the Rebbe Rashab asks like this: What's the connection? What?
Pakod pakadeti for the pay.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's about Yitzis Mitzrayim, right? So we're missing the Nun and the Samach. Well, look it up. It's in the beginning of Lech Lecho and Yalkut Shmeini. Okay. You can look it up on Google. I'm sure it'll come up. So the Rebbe Rashab's question is, Ayin Akfelis. What is this double letter? What does the double have to do with Gula? Shaliyesem Kfulis, since they're double, it indicates on the Gula. So we have 3 questions. Lech Lecha, the double word. What is the repeat? Ma'atzcha Meladcha Beis Avicha. What darichus? This elaboration on the location. And finally, the connection of Tfula, double to Geula. Now with that, let's go now back to the end of the Maimer, page 1195. Middle of the paragraph. If you don't have the text, you can follow if you wish. Go to ayinbeis.com, AYINBEIS.com, where all these pages are scanned PDFs. Good. Valpi Hanal. This is the classic. According to the above, so if they look at the beginning of the Maimer, he starts with the questions, and then he says, to understand all this, we need to preface what we discussed earlier, and he goes and sums up the previous Maimer. And then the Omnam Yashlemer, the new paragraph, is the flow that was there before. So the paragraphs were added after, and they basically weave in the chapter, in this case, Lech Lecha, the questions, and Yesh Lahagdim, a preface to what we learned earlier. And then after the discussion of earlier, the flow of the ideas, in this case, the whole ideas of Eish Yud and Eish Hey, and the whole concept of of Malchus and so on, he's now going to go and say, Al Pi Hanal, according to that, Yuvan Mashakasav Lech Lecho. We understood what it says, Lech Lecho, the Posuk Lech Lecho, which is, of course, the opening of the Maimer that we just looked at. Dehine, because now, Ayin Hakfiles, that's with the Yud, Hakfiles, the Inyan, with the idea of a double, he says a double letter, in this case, the Man Sapach, those 5 letters that have a double letter to them, who kamaimer kol iska de Shabbata kofel. He's explaining it with another Maimer Chazal. Chazal say, all the iska de Shabbata, all the things about Shabbos are kofel, are double. The Gemara is referring to, like for example, you have Lechem Mishnah. It's a double portion. And many other areas with Karbonis and others, where Shabbos is an element of you doing everything in a double way. V'hainu, what does this kofel refer to? Why double? Because double refers to, in the Chassidus language, Yichud b'chinas seviv kalam and umamal kalam. So double is referring to a unification, an integration between 2 divine energies. One is the immanent, finite energy of Mamala Kalaman, and the other is the Yichud of Seviv and Mamala, which of course is the theme we've been learning about. How Mamala, Eish Hei, wants to connect with Seviv, Shammai Ha'aretz Mitachas and Shammai Mamala are united. So this Yichud is referring to, there's a kefil here, 2 different energies that are joining together. So Shabbos, which is a higher level of divine revelation, is the joining of Seviv and Mamala. That's what V'zeu Sh'amar Razal. This is what Razal say. Ilmole Shamru Yisrael Shtei Shabbos Kil Chosam Hayu Miyad Negolin. If the Jewish people would keep 2 Shabbos properly, Kalocha, they would have immediately been redeemed. So you see here, Kefil, 2 Shabbos, and Geula. Why? Because he says, the Shtei Shabbos heim b'Shabbos achas. Now we say Shtei Shabbos, it doesn't just mean 2 weeks. Because with Pashtus, you read it, it means if they kept 2 weeks in a row, or 2 Shabbos, doesn't say in a row. They kept 2 Shabbos, so it says, no, the 2 Shabbos are the 2 levels of in one Shabbos. Hein b'Shabbos achas, Shabbat de Maila Shabbat, v'Shabbat de Yema. We know Shabbos actually has 3 parts, but he's referring to 2 here. Maila Shabbat is leading into Shabbos. That usually refers to Friday night. And Shabbat Diyem is the day of Shabbos. So Shabbos has 2 levels. Just for the record, this was discussed earlier. I want to refer you, because this was discussed actually pretty much a longer discussion. Let me see if I can find it quickly. It's down at the bottom of the right page, the whole thing.
I think it was in the beginning, years ago we spoke about it.
It's that, yeah, it's yeah. Well, you know what? Even 50 pages ago is almost years ago. Yeah, no, but it's not so far back as you think. Let me just find it. I think no, it's a little later. Here, 1 second. I just want to go there because he discussed it there. He talked about the 2 Shabbos. 1 second. Maybe Vaschanon? No. I thought it was. Just bear with me. Just okay. No. Oh, yeah, okay. Bottom of page 1100, Aleph Kuf. The Maimer A. Essentially, almost 100 pages ago. 95 pages back. You see? So if you look at the bottom of the page, he says every Shabbos has two levels. Shabbos Ilah, Shabbos Tata, a higher level of Shabbos, a lower level. One refers to the Shabbos that relates more to the weekdays, where you're resting from the efforts, the exertion of the entire week. That's more like Mamala Kalalman. And the second is already Shabbos on its own, more like Sevav Kalalman, if I recall correctly. That's what he said there. It's on that mimer. If you want to review it, you can review it, page 1100 and on. Okay? Good. Which is very much connected, because remember, we spoke about the three levels of Shabbos, Das Tachten, Das Elyon, and in Das Elyon, even a higher level. So here's what he says now. So that's Maila Shabbata and Yom Shabbata. What are they? Vehem b'chinas mamala kalam and v'sevav kalam. Maila Shabbata, like Friday night, leading into Shabbos. The beginning of Shabbos is mamala kalam, and Yom Shabbat is sevav kalam. So there we have Iske de Shabbata kafel, the two Shabboses that bring to the Geula, because when you have the yichur of mamala and sevav, that's Geula. By the yichud, the sevav kalam, mamala kalam, hu ha-geula. And by uniting the divine energy within existence, which is there in the weekdays and the first level of Shabbos, with the energy of the divine beyond existence, that is geula. The begalusa kutshebricha solik le'elo le'elo. Because in Golos, we say the expression of Zohar is that God, solik, means he concealed himself. Solik actually means he removed himself. Le'elo le'elo. So when God was here on earth, like we say, Shechina b'tachteinim hoisa, or in the Beis HaMikdash, when there's a state of Geula, God is here on earth. Godliness is revealed on earth. What is Golus? A form of displacement, where the Shechina, where Lukus, Chabrichu, Salik le'ela, like removed himself in a revealed. We're talking about revelation now. We're not talking about fundamental. God forbid that he removed himself completely. We're talking about the revelation of the divine is now concealed. Le'ela u'le'ela. I'll explain in a moment. And when you have the revelation of the transcendent energy in the immanent energy, through that comes the Geula. So let's go back to the central theme. Remember, God created the world with a tzimtzum and concealed the divine energy. Even Mamala Kalam is concealed. We have to reveal it. You look at the world around us, we don't see Elikus, we don't see the divine. We need to become aware of it. V'yadaita Ayin v'shavesa levavecha ke'avayu elikim. So even the elikim, that we're talking about the divine avaya, that is shining through elikim into every vivifying and energizing every piece of existence, is concealed. Golus, obviously, is a deeper concealment. Because in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, at least, there was some awareness. It was revelation. But Golus indicates utter concealment, haster aster panai, and you don't see the divine within our world, and that's why we're in Golus. Geula will be where we will recognize godliness and the godly purpose in all of existence. V'nigla k'ved Hashem v'rol kol basar yachdav. And all the other expressions used to demonstrate a world, Malar is Deus Hashem Kamayim Le'amachas, a world filled with divine knowledge. What is that what are the mechanics of that in the language of Chassidus? That in Golos, Le'ela, you don't see the divine, not in Mamala, not in Sevav. You don't see the divine revelation. Geula is when Seviv radiates within Mamala. You could say, what about just the revelation of Mamala Kalam is not enough? It is, but real Geula is you don't just have the divine that's commensurate to existence that's revealed, you also have the signing, the Gilui of Seviv in Mamala, where you have Havayu Elikim. Like when we say, in other words, that divine revelation, that Elikus will be revealed in this world. Seviv in Mamala is a state of Geula. That's the mechanics of what's necessary. What we do through our Aveda today, when you do a mitzvah, and when you become aware of you're actually bringing Gilui Elikus, which is ultimately Geula. You bring Seviv into Mamala, recognizing that the divine within existence is really an expression of the divine beyond existence. Hashem Elikim. So, what do we see from this? The connection of Kefel, of these two levels, Seviv Mamala, to Geula. Excuse me, sorry. Okay. So kasher Gilui Seviv Kalam b'Mamala Kalalmin Ayidezehu al Geula. Now he's going back to the kfelos of Lech Lecho. You know what? Let me just add explanation. Let me add some explanation. When we make a bracha, let's say on the food we eat, we're revealing the purpose of that food. That not on bread alone does man live, but on the spark of the divine. But in the bracha, we don't just say Baruch Atah Elokeinu. We say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam. Why? Because revealing the Elikus within the creation is still can't be called full Geula. You could say it's the first step. It's a step. The Geula is when Havaya and Elikim join, where you have godliness also on God's terms revealed. Because throughout Golus, you have had Jews and people who are very divine. What does that mean? They live their entire lives following what God wants, but it's still Golus. Even though by some tzaddikim it says that the Golus didn't affect them, Rashbi is higher than Churban, destruction. But generally, everybody is it's still a Golus. So the revealing godliness in a mitzvah is still doesn't mean you have Geula. It means you have a taste of it. It's the beginning. It's obviously a necessary step. But ultimately, Geula is when you also have a Elikus that's beyond existence revealed through existence. Then you have Geula of the world, not just revealing Elikus on the world's terms. So you can have Gilui Elikus also in Golus to some extent, but Geula is when the full-blown divine reality, like we learned, Elikus b'pshitus, that godliness is the dominant consciousness, and the world is the secondary one. That is when you can define Geula. Seviv in Mamala. Okay. V'zeh inyan hakfeles the Lech Lecho. And this is why we say, remember he asked the question, what does Kefil have to do with Geula? So now we know. Because Kefil refers to Seviv and Mamala, and their integration, their joining together is Geula, it brings Geula. Gilui b'chinas ha-Seviv. So the Kfelus of Lech Lecho is the revelation also of Seviv in Mamala. And thus this double letter refers to Seviv within Mamala, and that's Geula. Now he's going to explain this in the context of Avram Avinu. That's a general understanding of Kefil, of double. What about Avram? How does it apply to Avram and the Geula Avram experienced? It says the Hine Klolisi in Avram. What was the general purpose, the general role of Avram? It was to draw down, reveal godliness in the world. As we know, Vayikra Keil Elam, Avram Avinu went around, Megayres Ha'anoshim, Sarah was megayeres es hanoshim. This doesn't necessarily mean physical conversion, because there wasn't yet conversion until Matan Torah, but it meant they converted a pagan world to recognize there's a God. The Rambam explains it very eloquently, beautifully in the beginning of Laws of Avodah Zarah, that the world had devolved into paganism, one generation after the next, and forgetting there's a God in the world. What did Avram Avinu? He rejected the idolatry of his father Terach and of his community and his culture, and he began to seek out God. Whole story, how he went out in the meadows, sun, the moon, only came to realize that God is beyond everything. And then he made it his mission to spread this awareness. Basically, to everyone he could reach. So that was Avram's inyan, Gilia Lekuz Be'elam. In the language of the Maimer Basel Legani, the beginning it says after 7 generations. After 7 generations, yes, of sins that created the Solik Le'ela Le'ela, that the Shechina went from earth to the first Rakia, first heaven, second heaven, third. Avram began to draw it back down and began a process that would conclude with Moshe Rabbeinu, bringing the Shechina back to earth as it was before the eating of the tree of knowledge. So Avram's inyan was Gilia Lekuz Be'elam. Ukedeisa b'medrash Rabbah al pasuk Lech Lecho. The medrash gives a mashal in Lech Lecho on the pasuk Lech Lecho. What is the mashal? Mashal is sluchis. Sluchis is a vessel, a vase, a container. Shel apuf simon. This is spices. It's a particular spice. I'm not sure which spice it is. Apuful simon. There's a parsimon. I don't think this is a parsimon. It's a puful simon. It could be frankincense, maybe. Whatever it is. Not sure. To look it up. Anybody knows what incense it is? It was a certain type of incense, certain type of spice. Okay, so this is the example. It's sluchish la puful simon shahoyse bukefes tzamid psil umunechas bekeren zavis. Bukefes tzamid psil means that it's inside this bottle, inside this container. The covet summit psil is a wick, but it's just sitting there.
I think summit still means that it was closed, tight.
Right. Yeah, it's a closed, tight container. But psil, what does psil mean?
It's called summit psil. I don't know, maybe a seal, like you have.
Okay, maybe it's a seal, but I think also, I'll tell you why, because you're going to see. Well, let's continue. I'll explain in a minute. Let's just say summit psil. Umanechas bekeren zavis. It's sitting there in a corner. It's like, think of a container with spice, but it's not being active yet. In other words, it's there, but nobody is benefiting from it. And its aroma did not spread because it's all contained there. It's like a sealed container, and the reicha does not affect anybody. Does not. No one smells it. But then when you take this container and you move it, reicha neidif. In other words, when you shake it up, if it's sitting there, nobody senses anything. But when you move with it, meaning that so then it begins to spread, and the smell the aroma begins to impact the environment. This is going to be a mashal for Avram Avinu. Kach Omer le'lak Baruch Hu Avram. That's the meaning Lech Lecho. When Avram was in Ur Kasdim, where he was where he was. So Hashem is telling Avram, Lech Lecho. I'm telling you now to move, metaltlin. I want you to now, so to speak, get into a state of movement, which will spread the aroma of godliness. Avram, taltal atzmecha memakim lemakim. It wasn't just one move; it was a journey. No, it's now going to a state of like a nomadic state of journeying from place to place. V'shimcha is God, like it says, v'agad lo shmecha. What does the pasuk continue? I will make your name great, and your name will spread. Now, we're talking not just about fame, that Avram Avinu wasn't looking to be famous. We're talking about him spreading the reach that people should sense and feel godliness. If Avram would remain in Keren Zovis, in a little corner, wherever he lived, that would never happen. So Avram's job, that's what Hashem is telling him, Lech Lecho. Go out of your contained space where your impact is not felt and move, like taking a container and shaking it and it starts moving, and then you suddenly feel the aroma. You have today certain types of deodorants and stuff like that, where if you just sit, it sits. You shake it up, it starts releasing its scent. So that's what Lech Lecho is. V'hainu, what does that mean in the language of our Maimer here, Chassidus? Shehim shech gili b'chinas erein sof habligvul, shehigili er be'elam. That means that Avram, this taltal atzmecha is what? To draw down the revelation of the infinite light, Seviv Kalam Seviv. It should be revealed be'elam in the world. That's what Avram Avinu did. So therefore, Lech Lecho, the Kfilas, is essentially Avram's effort in bringing godliness into the world, and that's the kefil, the Seviv and Mamala. Okay, good. Omnom, now, however, Birdei Sheyiyeh, Hagili Tzarech Liyas Halo Mamata Lamayla. In order for there to be, however, a gilui, it doesn't just come out of the blue. You need a preparation and priming that comes mamata lamayla, from the initiative from below. So he says this is also indicated in the word lech lecha, lecha. V'zeu gamkein inyan lech lecha. No, it's in addition to what the Medrash said, that it's about movement in order to spread the aroma. He says, Lech Lecho, sheyavi l'sheiru shemokar neshama. So Chassidus interprets Lech Lecho that Avram's effort of arriving and coming to the root and source of the soul. U'k'mei shekosav kumi lecha rayasi. V'lechi lecha.
Kumi loch, ulechi loch.
Loch, loch. Kumi loch rayasi. So he's using the word loch like lech lecha. Kumi loch rayasi means my friend, rise. Ulechi loch, and travel. It's a statement, I believe it's a Shir HaShirim. Am I correct? I think so. So in other words, it's an effort coming from the individual that's rising, and traveling. What does this Aveda consist of? It says, V'zeu Aveda de Tefillah. This is the service of davening. Mamata lamayla. K'mei shekosav sulam mutzav arza, V'reishe magia hashamayma. Like a ladder standing on the ground, and the top of the ladder, the head of the ladder, reaches into heaven. Now we know that this ladder consists of 4 rungs. Veheina dalet shlives. These are the 4 rungs of tefillah, the tefillah. The b'shemin esrei aliyah l'sheira shemakan neshama. So the 4 rungs which conclude with shemin esrei. So the 4 rungs are usually explained 2 ways. Either birchas hashachar, psuka de zimra, brichas krishma and krishma. And the 4 last one is krishma and shemin esrei, or, which is more what's similar to what he's saying here, birchas hashachar, psuka de zimra, krishma, and shemin esrei. And brichas krishma and shema go together. So you're climbing. In Birchas HaShachar, you're dealing with the basic functions and thanks, gratitude to God. As you climb the ladder of davening, you're getting closer. Psukkah de Zimra is a contemplation on God's greatness, creation. Shema, of course, is Achdus, Shema Yisrael. And Shemin Esrei, Avdei Kamemari, you're standing in utter bittul, which is why we stand, Amida. But you can't jump to Shemin Esrei if you don't go first through the first 3 rungs. All this is a journey from the bottom up, not from the top down. Torah is from the top down. So he's saying, this Lech Lecho that Avram Avinu went to spread the divine, Gilui Seviv Mamala, comes through the Aveda of Lech Lecho, Avram's Aveda from Amata Lamayla, which he's calling here davening. And Shemin Esrei Aliyah l'sheira shemokan neshama. So the neshama, you start off with saying neshama ba'apei in the morning. Moedani lefanecha melachem kem shachzata b'neshmasi. Neshama shenasata b'tahirihi. As the neshama continues to so-called be activated and energized, Shemin Esrei, you reach the root, the top level, the source, the root. And this Aveda, Mamata Lamayla, V'ayidei Ha'aliyah, Ayidei Zeh, through this Aliyah, through the effort made from below, who Ayidei Zeh, who Amshach is B'chinas Eden Sef HaSev V'klam. Through that comes the transmission of the transcendent, infinite light of Seviv Kalam. So there you have the Lech Lecho, the addition of the word Lecha, your effort. You have Lech Lecha, the double Chof, all connected to Geula, to Avram's Aveda of connecting and drawing down Seviv into Mamal. Okay, but we still need to know what's the expressions Ma'artzecha Melatcham Beis Avicha. So he's going to explain that now. That this is all part of the Aveda, Mamata Lamayla, from the bottom up. Not just Lech Lecha. He's telling him from where you should go. From your land and from your birthplace. It says Ma'artzecha is referring to Hu Hayitzia Min HaChumrius. So Eretz refers to the crassness and the coarseness of this material world. Artzecha. Artzies, like you say, I'm a Eretz. What does it mean? It means an earthy person. That's the taking from the earth, the materialism of the earth. Yitziyah min hachumris. Lech lecha, leave behind and shed your connection to Artzecha, to the chumrius, to the coarseness of the material world. U'kamei shekasev, shichi amcha ubeis avicha. Forget your nation, your people, and the house of your parents. Why? Because if you want to grow to a higher spiritual level, you can't be trapped by the culture in which you're in. In this case, a materialistic culture. Ubepratis, says the Rebbe Rashab, that's in general. So Lech Lecha Ma'artzecha, like in davening, what are you doing? You're born, you wake up in the morning, You're a material human being. Your davening is meant to elevate you, to go out of your crass material state and climb, become more spiritual. So he says here, that's Lech Lecho ma'artzecha. That's in general. Uba pratis, when you break it down further, or specifically, ma'artzecha is bechinas nihi. Nihi is the lowest level. There's Chabad Chagas Nihi. Nihi is the actionable part of a human being, referring to the guf. You have Melech Lev Kovid. Melech is Rosh Hashanah, Moyach Lev Kovid. So there's the mind, is Chabad. Chagas is the emotions, and Nihi are the legs, the lowest part of the person, the outer emotions. So he says that's Nihi. And Maladatcha is Beis Avicha hu Chagas v'Chabad. So Artzecha Malatcha Beis Avicha is a Lech Lecho that Avram was told that he should leave and shed all those layers. First, the layer of Ma'artzecha, the crassness. Then Malatcha, his emotional subjectivity. And finally, Chabad, Beis Avicha. So Ma'artzecha is the Chumrius, Nehi. Malatcha is Chagas. Nelad, Midas are considered Malatcha because they're birthed. And Beis Avicha, the Ovis is Chabad. She explained, the Nehi, hu ativiyas sha'oda murgal behem. What's Nehi? Nehi are the habits, the routines that a person is accustomed to. We all have our natural routines, our natural habits and proclivities.
Can you explain how Maladcha is referring to Chagas?
He's going to explain. Well, if he doesn't, I'll explain it. But let's read the whole thing. I think he's going to say something. Okay. This is not like the emotions. A habit is not really an emotion. It's a routine. It's already wired into your behaviors. So it's not something you get excited about. On the contrary, it's actually very dull and routine and boring and monotonous because it's part of your habits. So midas is the things you get excited. You get passionate about something. You're drawn, you're attracted to something. You are seduced by something. Whenever you're excited about something, that indicates that you are not the thing. You're not one with it. That's why you get excited by it. When you talk about routines, you don't get excited by your routines because they're part of who you're not, who gets excited, for example, if they brush their teeth every morning. I mean, I'm using a neutral routine. But it's just you just do it. It's part of your habits. So he says that the person himself is outside. You suddenly see something that stimulates and activates your emotions. That's something outside of you that's exciting you. Like we see in holiness. The idea of getting excited about godliness, next page, 1196. So when a person gets excited by some revelation, some experience where they've experienced godliness in some way, that's an excitement on something that's not them. That's why they get excited by it. As it's known, as it's known, as it was explained above in a number of different discourses. They also say drushim, each one is right. Came by hepech, and the same thing in the opposite of holiness. When a person gets excited by something, by some taiva, He is not that thing. That's why he's excited by it. Aval inyan nehi, but nehi that we're discussing now, a habit, hu shemutva murgal kol kach ba'adavid, he's so accustomed, and it's so habitual and ritual and routine and mechanical, you can even say, robotic. It's not in a state of any form of stimulation or excitement or arousal. For the person, this is how it has to be, and he doesn't even know of another option. It's so much wired. It's so wired within him, it's just his habit. Now, clearly, this is worse than excitement because it's become so much part of you. The excitement that you get stimulated, you could also choose not to become part of it. But this has become so hardwired in the person's habits. So in that sense, it's harder to get rid of. Look how hard it is to break a habit. And this he says, Lech Lecho ma'atzcha, leave, free yourself from your habits. So this is the beginning of all movement. Because if you don't get rid of your habits, you'll be a creature, you're then a product of your circumstances, a creature of habit, a victim even of circumstances. So that's the Reish say Yitzia. V'shviras hachumri is the first beginning of movement, is breaking those rituals, the negative ones, obviously. And shviras hachumri is breaking the habit, breaking the crassness and the coarseness of your material habits. Hagas. V'shviras hachumri is hagas, the thick coarseness of those habits. V'achar kach, after you've done Lech Lecho ma'atzcha, then comes the other two steps. From the Meladtecha and Beis Avicha, which is Mebchinas Midas u'Moichin de l'Umazeh, freeing yourself from the emotions and the cognitive and intellectual components of the other side, which is not kedusha, of the pollutants and the toxins in your life. Okay, I see it doesn't really explain, so let me explain. I'll also explain what this means in real practical way. Basically, in very short here, the Rebbe Rashab is giving us the key, the secret to transformation, to all type of change that a person looks for. So you have to break it down into parts. There are things that are our habits and our rituals that are so routine that they're the most difficult to break because they're part of who you are. You become so accustomed to it. Think of any addiction. Any addiction, what is so difficult about it is not the actual action, is that you become addicted to it, that you cannot live without it. It's not like, if something is, let's say somebody gets excited about something, like he says, the second level. So there at least, okay, you got excited, but it's not something you're addicted to. But if it's something that's so much part of hardwired within you, and it's part of the crassness of this world, that this is what people just do, it's very hard to change that. So that's step one. Midas of l'umazeh is already when you get emotions, people get, for example, they fall in love with something that they shouldn't fall in love with. We're not talking about being addicted to it or became your habit. You see something. You see something that seduces your emotions, something that appeals to you, attracts you. That's midas of l'umazeh, emotions towards something that is not appropriate. It could be anything. It could be food. It could be human beings. It can be sexuality. It could be anything. Moichin de l'umazeh is when your mind is polluted with wrong thoughts and wrong ideas. Your mind is thinking about machshava zaros or anything like that. So the point is that all three, Lech Lecho has to be a Lech Lecho to free. It's all Aveda Mamata Lamaila. Because you're beginning with your life and you're trying to free yourself from your habits, your negative emotions, and your negative ideas. That's the brief explanation. As far as the explanation of Malatacha that you asked, I thought I would understand it. Well, the Malatacha, first of all, Chassidus explains that midas are always connected to leidas hamidas. Midas are nailed, like here. They're not who you are, they're birth. By either the kedusha, when you contemplate on, let's say, godliness, it births and gives birth to good emotions, like the Rambam says. How does a person come to love, have love and awe to God? She is being. He contemplates on God's greatness, on the beauty of nature, on the synchronicity, design. Same thing, the opposite. When a person contemplates on something negative, it gives birth to negative emotions. So that's the first thing. So Malatacha is a form of a birthing. Midas are usually referred leidas hamidas, because we're not talking now about habits, and we're not talking about natural ingrained love, or like, for example, the love of children. We learned earlier is not midas, it's rotzen, because midas generally is about something that is born as a result of a person's behavior, meaning a person's thoughts and ideas. So that's why Malatacha is a midas, and it fits to what he's saying here, that it's something outside of you. You give birth to something, it's not you. So the emotions towards something is something outside of you. That's Bapashta is the reason. And in general, midas, we learned earlier in Ayin Beis that midas are subject to growth. When you say hagdolas hamidas, the maturing of a person's emotions. So even though a mind also matures, but midas are compared a lot more to like a tree, sameach, because midas, in the most obvious way, the most maturity, the difference between a child and an adult is not just is mostly in the emotions, more than in the mind. You can have a child prodigy, even though it's not a mature mind in the first full sense of the word, but a child prodigy emotionally will be a child. So emotions are connected to Hagdolah. What was that? Gidul Hamidus. So it's growth of Midas. Anyway, that's how I would explain Malat. So we have here so far.
How is Nahi connected to habits? What's connection?
I just said.
What? No, Midas, I understand. It's Vedas and Midas. But Nahi, it's also Midas. How is it different?
Nahi is the actionable part of Chagas. Chagas are complete Midas. Nahi is the actions. It's like the result of the Midas in a very basic action way. So Nahi is connected to behavior, whereas Chagas is connected to the emotions behind the behavior. So when you talk about habits, you associate them much more with Artzacha and Nahi. Okay? So v'zehu says the Rebbe Rasha, v'zehu ha'idei aveda shal pitam v'das. Aha. So the three levels he just talked about sounds to me that he's talking about the first three levels in davening. The first three rungs. So aveda al pitam v'das, which means you haven't connected yet to the sheirish haneshama, the root of your soul. Like Chaya Yechida, it's more like Naran. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama. Nefesh is Nehi. Ruach is Midas Chagas. Neshama is Chabad Meichel. So the first three steps is Al Pitam V'das. In other words, it's a very step-by-step rational process. You haven't yet reached the Etzem and Neshama. We're talking now Chaya Yechida, like Mesiras Nefesh, Amunah, faith. Remember, he said Lech Lecho le'etzem haneshama, which is Shemen Esrei. So then, after these three, will you work on your conscious faculties? What three parts? Your actions, behavior. your habits, your emotions, and your cognitive, basically behavioral, emotional, and cognitive conditioning, then you come to Etzem and Neshama, which is beyond the conscious faculties. That sounds like the fourth level, the fourth rung, even though he doesn't say it explicitly. But V'zehu Lech Lecho, and this is the meaning that Avram was told, Lech Lecho, the Tachlis in Avram Avinu Olav HaSholem. The Tachlis is the purpose of Interesting why he suddenly brings Avinu Olav HaSholem here. Before he just said Avram. That's a general question, why sometimes he says that, sometimes not. Let me see here. Yeah, before he said, okay, fine. Just pointing it out. That he lahamshad gilel lekuz be'elam, to draw the divine revelation in the world. Who inyan taltel atzmacha, going back to the Medrash. Taltel atzmacha. In other words, going to a taltel atzmacha means in Yiddish, move yourself, move around. How would you say taltel atzmacha?
The modern Hebrew is shaking.
I know.
Shake yourself up.
Shaking of the muscle with the spice. But taltel here is like metal. Taltel means that go on a journey. It's the opposite of yishuv, like tiltula gavra. There's an expression in the Gemara, tiltula gavra. That when a person is traveling, they have more, they don't have the peace of mind to be able to focus on something. That's the negative side of it. Tiltula gavra is a form of, because a human being needs calm, serenity, a place to stay. Here he says, taltel atzmacha, move about. That's the best way I would translate. Taltel atzmacha, v'yidei shimcha mizgadol. And through this, your name will spread and grow. The b'chin is gili eir. So obviously he's not talking about, as I said, fame on a petty level. He means gili eir, that your name, Avram, as one that reveals godliness, will be revealed as a gili eir throughout the world. And how does this happen? That's through Avram Avinu's work of climbing. L'sharsha, to the root and source of the neshama, shu'aved the sheirush shemakar neshama. The work of the root and source of the soul, which he doesn't spell out what that is exactly, but usually it's amunah, b'sidus nefesh. We learned about the power of the Seviv Kalaman in the nefesh. Naran is like mamala Kalaman. Again, he doesn't say this explicitly, but it just adds to the whole structure.
He said 2 lines ago,
yeah. So through the first 3 steps is like, sounds like more like mamala. This brings it to Gilead, which we learned earlier a lot about that. So that's why he's not repeating. If you remember, that's the 3rd level, etzem haneshama, that connects directly to the divine, as opposed to the usa deliba, which is step 2, and birurim, which is step 1. So it sounds to me, is the first 2 steps, the general 2 steps, even though it's 3.
Aveda al pitam v'das.
Yeah, correct. And now he comes to Etzem and Neshama, v'ayidei zeh, and through this Aveda of Avram, himshir gili b'chinas erin sof hablikvul, he drew down the revelation of the infinite light, li is gili elokuz be'elam, in a way that there should be divine revelation in this world. Seva v'mamala, gili eblikvul, into this world. So in other words, Avram didn't just do the work of revealing the divine that's commensurate to existence. He also brought down Sheresh and Neshama of Seviv Kalam, which is the double kefel of Lech Lecho, which brings Geula. There you have it. The answers to the questions. It adds Havana, understanding to what we learned about this whole subject matter. So you have Yedaita Yem Shavis Lecha Kashem Ulekim Ba'aretz Ba'aretz Mitachas B'Shemayim Al Ba'aretz Mitachas. in Avram Avinu's life. There you go. Yeah. Now, obviously, a qualification has to be made that this is all before Matan Torah. We didn't yet have the tzivui, the command via Daita Ayin. But nevertheless, lefiyerech, proportionate to Avram's times, he drew down Sefer V'Mala. Obviously, it would become far greater in broader ways after Matan Torah, as we lead it to the Geula Amitis Vashlem. But there you have the end of Discourse 143. Lech Lecho Ayin Vav. The Frierdiker Rebbe said the summary of the beginning of this mimer was Chukas Aliyah de Malchus Nikra B'Shem Cheli. That the yearning and the elevation of Malchus is called an illness. That's how he describes it. Okay. Any questions? Because I think we'll stop here at the end of this mimer. I think it's easier before we begin the next one. That's it. Yeah. If you want to know more about Etzem and Neshama, I believe, pointed out to you. He talks about the 3 levels. Where was that?
We're entering the last mimer, and then the third book. It's not called the mimer anymore. That's what I always ended up understood. The 144th.
We're going to learn tomorrow. We'll begin the next mimer, which will be the 144th and last mimer that was delivered by the Rebbe Rashab, in addition to being written. Remember, I've said a number of times, I said today, that he wrote the Hemshech, the whole flow of the ideas first. Then later he added the beginnings and ends. Then later he added the summaries and the chapter numbers, which ended a while back, earlier in this volume. But now we'll conclude the Maimorim as they were broken into Maimorim. We're only going to have the flow of the ideas without the beginnings and ends. So it's called Chelik Shalei Nema.
But that's not called the mimer anymore.
I don't know. Are you semantic? What do you mean by called?
It is a semantic question. I mean, the third book is called what? It's not called Maimorim.
It's called Chelik Gimel Shalei Nemar. That's all it's called. The third volume that was not delivered.
Okay.
Technically, a mimer means there are many Maimorim Lei Nemar. That there are Maimorim that are called Maimer Chassidus and says Lei Nemar. They weren't delivered, but doesn't mean they're not a mimer. Even though a mimer does mean a statement, as an Amira speaking, but I've seen it says Maimer Lei Nemar. So you want to call it a drush, Chassidus? I don't know if I never heard anybody really go into the distinction. But bottom line, it was not delivered. He never never delivered it in public. That will begin. I'll explain it once we finish the next mimer. I'll explain. By the way, is the third volume available?
Yeah.
Oh, the third volume of Ayin Beis is available? Lei Nemar?
I have it.
No, I also have it.
Is it available in the store? That's what he's doing.
I don't think it.
I
don't
couldn't
think
find any online.
It's not. I don't think.
Okay, what we will do is, first of all, it doesn't exist on Hebrew books.
Yeah, it's on Hebrew books. You can download it. Yeah.
What we'll do is I'll have, maybe one of you want to help with this. I'll have someone scan it. We'll scan it as we go along. So all the pages will be online that anybody can follow. Yeah, we'll for sure do that.
What's the difference if it's a mimer or a drush? Lamai nafka mina.
It's really not for here, but generally, there's different ways that Rabbi delivered Chassidus. For example, what would you call Tanya? A drush or a mimer? Neither, right? It's a sefer. So it all depends. I mean, drush. You also have the Rishimis. The Tzemach Tzedek wrote Rishimis. The Rebbe Rashab also did. The Rishimis are more like gloss. A Rishim is a commentary on psukim and so on. I don't know, drush and maimer. I don't know if there's a distinction between a drush and a maimer in Chassidus. The Rebbe said a drush, a maimer. There are also maimorim that the Rabbi said, but they never wrote. The Chassidim wrote. And then there's the opposite. They wrote it and never said it. So there's a lot of different categories. What can I tell you? Where's the piece about Etzem and Neshama? I can't find it now. Usa Deliba.
Are you taking any questions on the end of this mimer that we just learned?
Yeah, sure. Anybody has any questions, go for it.
I am.
Oh, okay, one second. One second. On page 1180 is the piece about Etzem and Neshama, if you're interested. 1180. Okay. Go ahead.
So this was supposed to. I'm sure it does bring it all together. The final punchline. I'm a little confused about. There's an avoida on all of these midos, but I guess it's unclear to me what's the final step that is a gilui of or a bleibul. Just in other words, just because we work on all of our midos, which are seemingly part of the or hagvul, then all of a sudden we're joining, the olam sovav v'makif with the olam mamala kol olamim. I mean, it seems like he's saying it's almost automatic. Once you work on yourself and you improve your midos and you get rid of bad habits and you rid yourself of, I guess, attachments to this world, bad thoughts at each level, action and feeling and thought, then, I mean, it seems like okay, then you have an opening for the entry of Ora Bleibul into yourself, into this world. But I didn't understand actually how the mamash happens. It seems like he's saying, well, it's almost like automatic. You prime yourself and then it will happen. Maybe I missed that last step. Yeah.
No,
that's
last
my
step
question.
Yeah, I understand. The last step is the fourth step. You skipped one step. The three steps we talked about, the three rungs, is nefesh ruach neshama, is like you said, artzecha melatcha beis avicha. That's the behavioral, the habits. Yes, you're freeing yourself. Then there's one more step in Aveda that you're revealing now sheirish haneshama, your own sheirish haneshama, your amuna. That's why I mentioned faith, mesiras nefesh. That's why I referred to page 1180, where he describes what is that the work of etzem and neshama. So basically, you can't get to, like I've mentioned many times, v'hafta es Hashem Lekecha b'chol avavcha, b'chol nafshecha, and then b'chol ma'idecha with all your might. So you can't get to levels of revealing your, like Yom Kippur, we reveal the Yechida. You first have to work on the conscious faculties before you get to your superconscious. So the bligvul within you is your avodah. You work on going beyond just freeing yourself from your habits, your negative emotions and ideas. Now you go into revealing the root of your soul, its fundamental connection to God, that absolute commitment, for instance, of mesiras nefesh or nasa v'nishma or kabbalah soil, and other experiences that are beyond the rational work on the first three levels. That makes you a keli now to draw down the bligvul from above. That's the key. So you have to work on your gvul, meaning the first three levels. Then you work on your bligvul as much as you can. Ma'itcha. Everybody has their bligvul beyond their regular. And then that makes a keli to bring down sevav, the bligvul from above, into the gvul from above. So remember the whole point that he's saying that Ira Bligvul, if you go back one more point I want to make. When you go back to the page, the beginning of this mimer, if you remember, read his words. I look at page 1190. I'm sorry, no. One second. 1192. The beginning of the paragraph. That that's the inyan. You have to break the negative in order to draw down bli gvul. It doesn't come on its own. Remember, the bli gvul was concealed from us. That's the second part of the tzimtzum. It affected that the bli gvul recedes into its source. It remains intact, but how do we access it? So you can access Eir HaGvul through the first steps of working Tam V'das, Nehi, Chagas, Chabad, the behavioral, emotional, and cognitive. But to draw bli gvul, so first you have to access your Sheresh and Neshama, which comes when a person goes through the negative, like we learned about Reach HaTshuva, Tshuva being greater than a tzaddik. And that requires going through the darker, that elicits deeper strengths in your work of like tshuva, or other forms where the etzem and neshama, the sheresh and neshama is revealed, and that breaks through the barrier and starts drawing bli gvul into existence. If you don't do that, yeah.
Okay, it's clear. It's much more clear now. I get it.
Yeah.
Can I ask?
Now, if you go back, you see there, he says, Ner mitzvah v'teireh is shem havayda le'ela, which is higher than havayda teireh mitzvahs. I'm sorry, derech chaim, techachas musa, is higher than teireh mitzvahs, like higher, the reach of teireh mitzvahs is lower than the reach of tshuva, which comes from transfer. That's why Eliyahu, we're going to learn, is twice Havayu Elikim, because he's Vayirapi, he's healing. He's healing a problem. So coming into this dark world not only helps us reveal the divine, helps us reveal a divine that's beyond the tzimtzum. Because to transform darkness, you need to have a higher strength.
Is it through the connection? Sorry, Rabbi Yecheskel, let me just follow up question. Is it through the stripping away of all these midos that are below the superconscious, and the accessibility, or you will, at least the capacity to access the Yechida, the superconscious, that is how we are essentially able to draw down the Or HaBli Gvul. In other words, if we can get in touch with our Yechida, then we're in touch with the essence of the divine, that is Lifnei Atzimtzum, and then we can draw down that level of Elokus into this world. Is that what you're saying?
That's part of what I'm saying, yeah. I really said two things. What you just said is correct. In other words, when we behave in a bli gvul way, we're a keli for the bli gvul from above. Additionally, to break the darkness is the key to reach bli gvul, because it's to reach such a high level, you need to do something that's basically a true paradigm shift. When you work on the first three levels, is not the total shift, because you haven't dealt with well, I don't want to talk about the first three levels, but let's talk about the techachas musar. It requires, it's like what comes through only in this world is achievable, because this world, it's like the luchas shniyas. Only after the break can you reach a higher level of atzmus ha'er or er hasev.
It has to be transformative.
Yeah.
Rabbi Jacobson.
And that happens through going through darkness, through darker darkness. Yeah.
Doing tshuva, I got it.
Is this higher than the Devoto Pinimis Bina Misala Sakas Shlira?
On page 1180, he says that. Yeah.
So that's even higher than that level. What do you agree? You just get what Rusa Riba by that. You don't get that high level.
On 1180, he addresses what you just said directly. He says the bitla rusa deliba is still hasaga shashlila. Etzem and neshama doesn't come through hasaga.
Okay. So we can't get it by hasaga b'chal.
No, you get hasaga. You need hasaga to get to there. You can't jump there. Yeah. You can't jump to etzem if you don't first deal with your conscious. It's like you can't have tshuva law without tshuva tata. If you don't clean up your house, you can't start bringing in etzem haneshama. You have to get rid of the dust first, the dirt.
So you have to go through Rusa de Riba to reach this high level.
Before Rusa
Higher
delivery,
level.
you have to go through changing your habits and getting rid of the pollutants in your emotions and in your mind.
I understood that. I'm asking now.
No, in that context,
mathematically,
he's
I'm
not
going to
talking.
say, Rusa de Riba, yeah, what is given birth to by Saga Sharira, Misad Penimis Bina. That's after
So,
that first level when you cleaned up your house. That's Misad Saga Safra.
That's still,
So
yes, it's Das Elyon, but not the ultimate Das Elyon.
okay. And you can't get
Basically,
Das
it goes
Elyon.
through, if you want, it's 5 levels. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama is the cleaning up part that we spoke about. Chaya is Rusa Deliba, and Yechida is Etzem HaNeshama.
Yeah. Higher is like, there's still some awareness of where you are.
Yeah,
So to
Chaya
speak.
is essentially super conscious work, but not yet the core essence of who we are. That's page 1180. If you read it again, you'll see it's very clear there.
I know, I read it, I know it. Okay,
Okay.
that's why I wanted to find out. Okay, very good. So
It's
there's no such thing
birur-
as Hasaga.
In the different language, it's Lechem min ha'aretz is the 3 lower levels, is birur, Eichel metech pselis and pselis metech eichel, the waste and the nutrients.
Yeah,
The chaya is the level of eichel metech eichel, but it's birur.
Uh-huh.
And then etzem is no birur altogether. It's just
Right, that's that third level that's mentioned on 1130 about Shabbos, the third level of Shabbos. That's what we're talking about. That can happen
that's
every
etzem
week.
and neshama. The etzem and neshama part, yeah.
That goes up there and that touches Reisha Yisada, and it can't be Mom Shift. That's why Mom doesn't come down on Shabbos, but it
Right.
can come
But
down.
you can't go
during
there
the
if you don't go through the lower levels.
Yeah, okay.
Like he said right here, you have to have a Veda Mamata Lamaila. There's no way to get it because the Tzimtzum doesn't let you get there.
Mhm.
So the Tzimtzum has concealed Bligvul. So how do we get it? We have to break through. There has to be some breakthrough.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Yeah, we see that in Tanya. The Alter Rebbe says a person can be far from any kind of heshbon nefesh, any kind of seichel, any kind of these step-by-step processes. And when they're told to give up their life or bow down, they give up their life, which is a Mesiras Nefesh. They've reached it apparently without any of these steps involved.
I'm not sure what the question is.
You were just saying
The
that
Alter Rebbe is
the
suggesting
system
the whole Chabad Chassidus and all the work that Chabad talks about, the Alter Rebbe is negating.
No, but I thought you were just saying that in order to, that's a step-by-step process. You have to clean the house, you get up, and then finally get to Chai Yechida. But I was saying that we have examples of people that never went through those kind of steps and still were able to.
And 1 second, Kimi, we're in Tanya. You can't go through that. You can't have the Geula and the transformation without going through the steps. You have exceptions with certain situations. Somebody reads, but they still did not complete. You have to have the Gilu. You have to have Giluyim and Tachtenim. There's no way around that. Where do you find that there's an alternative path?
Well, the story about it's not. I don't know if the term is kal shivakalim, but where the person would, even though he's far from torments, never learned it in his life, is willing to just say, "I'm a Jew."
But what are you saying? That's the path of Aveda that we should be looking for?
No, but
he's saying that even a kal shabakalim has etzem and neshama, but that's not a derech in Aveda. That's like saying that the child that's cried out kukuriku, that we should all do kukuriku now. Why didn't the Talmidei Bashem to start doing kukuriku? That tells you that there's an etzem and neshama, even in a person like that. But everybody needs Aveda to transform yourself. There's no way around that. There's no shortcuts. Alter Rebbe doesn't say there's a shortcut. He's saying the etzem and neshama is there. It's like saying the building is all burned down, but you still have an ember, a spark that's alive. Now we need the Aveda.
But can we achieve tshuva b'rega achas, something like that? I mean, I understand that the main The main
Uh,
derech
one
is this
second.
one that you're explaining, the step-by-step
Not
process.
just the main. It's not just the main. We'd have the geula here if we achieved everything b'rega achas. Why is the geula not here? Why thousands of years of Mesiras Nefesh and work and all that if we can just do it with one magic button?
If everybody just celebrate Shabbos, 2 Shabbosim in a row,
Just say, so why
it's
are we still here? Why thousands of years you couldn't find anyone that kept Shabbos twice?
Yeah, I thought it was
I'm not
everybody.
sure.
I'm not saying, I'm not
The thing
denying
called-
what I've learned here today, but I'm just
Why
saying.
do we
that
have
seems
Tayyag
to me-
mitzvahs? What do you mean? Yeah, but what you learned, you're misinterpreting what it means.
It's my
It's like saying the
Shabbos
child
for 2 Shabbos
that
is
cried
anyway.
kukri. Why do we have a whole Torah of Tayyag mitzvahs? V'avadtas Hashem Elokeichem, and you have to work on yourself and daven every day and go through the 4 rungs and a tefillah, Torah, yigiyah, effort. Why is all that? Is that optional?
There's a long way and a short way.
There is no short way. Where did you ever see there's a short way? I never heard of a short way. Torah is not a short way.
Can we ask this question a bit differently? We see
Sure.
by the Baal Shem, that he saw by the each pashut. Mami saw etzem nefesh, and that's why they were so precious to him.
I just said that,
how
but
did
but
they-
that's still the child that cried kukuriku on Rosh Hashanah. Did everyone afterwards say, you know what? Why don't we all just learn how to do kukuriku with sincerity, and we don't need anything
that's not
else?
the question.
Why
The
do they have to
question is,
daven? No, I'm saying
The
if he
question is,
compares the
if we-
heavens. One second. If he compares the heavens with a kukuriku, why do we need a whole machzor for hours and
No, no.
hours of davening Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur?
No, if these people have this etzem nefesh, what the Baal Shem saw, isn't that applicable to their avoda, which they
Everybody has
doing?
etzem nefesh, but we're learning time and again that you need avoda momata lamayla. There's no way around that.
Right.
There's simply no
I'm
way
asking what the
around it,
difference is.
period. I never heard that there's another way. If you could show me a place that says, here's another derech and avoda, I never
Yeah,
saw
I
that.
know
I've
there's
not
a-
seen it. Not in Nigla, not in Chassidus, and not in Chassidus Chabad.
It's like in the
but-
difference between
But in
the-
Nazareth,
the-
but in Nazareth,
like in the
that's what
difference of the work
and
between the
that-
Baal Shem
in
and the
Nazareth.
Alter Rebbe, how there was that transition between the Baal Shem and the Alter Rebbe. Is that correct?
First of all, what do you mean transition? The Alter Rebbe is simply explaining the Baal Shem Tov. There's no
Yeah, I know,
difference
but he put
between
it,
them.
it took on a different aspect. As we say, there's a difference between, we don't even
No,
talk about
no,
different-
no. I don't agree with that. That's not what the Rabbeim say. It didn't take on any different aspect. He was the Rebbe Rashab says he Teres Baal Shem Tov. There
Yeah,
were
I
some
know.
people who disagreed with Alter Rebbe,
Right, right. I'm not
but
talking
we
about that.
don't we don't disagree with Alter Rebbe. Alter Rebbe
No,
is the
we're
Teres
taking-
Baal Shem Tov.
Mhm.
I listen. Etzem Neshama is everybody agrees there's an Etzem Neshama in every person. That's not a
Yeah.
disagreement, and appreciating it is also. The question
Mm-hmm.
is what is expected of us. What's the aved of a person? The aved of the person is b'chol nafshecha, b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol meidecha. Like he says here, we just learned. He says the only way is mamata lamaila. I referred you to a page back where did you read that page where he talks the necessity for mamata lamaila? That without it, he even said it's false.
Yeah, yeah.
What did he say by davening? If
I know,
somebody
I
tries to jump
I know.
step, hold on. If somebody tries to jump steps, he said they're delusional. He used a very sharp word. Anyway,
Yeah.
what should I tell you?
No, this is just a simple question. That the Baal Shem Tov saw in these people means that was applicable in their davening, in their eating, in their living, etc. They really had
I'm not sure
something
what that
we might
means.
not have.
Of,
That's what I'm asking you. What does that mean? The fact that he saw that.
I
by
just
those
said to
people-
you. I mean, I don't understand. It's not the derech haveda to go to etzem and neshama. The derech haveda is to work step by step and reveal the etzem and neshama as well. That's the point. But I'm not sure what the question is. Of course, it's applicable. There's nefesh, ruach, neshama, chai, yechida. You need all 5.
We don't say
Now-
that. We don't say the idea by Tanya, but the sense by Tanya that you have that thing. You remember that love to Hashem. That's pretty deep. That's not a step-by-step avoda.
Can I ask a question just to help me? I'm a lawyer. I'm a litigator. Let me try to mediate this issue. What maybe Rabbi Eliezer, or maybe even Rabbi Cheskel are saying is those who may give up their lives, in Mesiras Nefesh and Al Kiddush Hashem, so they may accomplish some, I don't know, some connection with the Atzmus of the Eibishter in that moment, but they're not Gilui of the Or Hablikvul in this world because they're gone. They've expired. It's like not of an Aviyah. We just read Parsa Shmini. It came up with a foreign offering, and they were consumed by godliness. But that didn't help redeem the world. They may have redeemed their own neshamas in some way. We don't exactly understand. But so they in one step they connected with Atzmus. It seems, and that's my understanding. But it didn't help the rest of us. Didn't help this world. It was good for them, but it wasn't a gilui of the or in this world. I don't know. I'm trying to reconcile.